Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast on, what is it? It's the 13th of July 2016. I'm Tim Danton, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro, and with me today I have not two guests as per normal, but three. Who is the mystery third guest? So we have Darian Graham-Smith.
Hello.
We have Barry Collins.
Hello.
And as viewers of the live Google Hangouts chat will know, we have Nicole Kobe.
Hello.
Hello, Nicole. So, who are we going to start with? Let's start with. I completely forgot. Is it you, Barry, that we start with?
No, I think it's Darian.
Yeah,
Darian.
you'd think it would be Nicole to celebrate her special guest appearance, but no, it's me. So lots of things have happened in technology in the past couple of weeks. This one starts off sounding quite serious, but it's got some fun stuff at the end, so bear with me. In the aftermath of the Dallas shooting, you may recall, police used I think it was actually originally a bomb disposal robot, but it was in fact redeployed for use as a bomb delivery robot. They sent it in to where the sniper was and blew up a bomb and killed him by remote control using a robot to deliver execution, I suppose you might say. Similarly, this is a little bit of a step down in seriousness.
Where are you going to go from this, Darian, after that start? Yes.
In the past couple of weeks. Now you may not notice. I don't know if you've been visiting any shopping malls in Connecticut lately, but there's a robot. There's a surveillance robot. There's like a robot mall cop, which has been deployed not just there, but in various shopping centres across the US and probably Japan, I would guess. But and it kind of trundles around the mall. It's a remote controlled little robot. It's like a surveillance bot. It's got cameras. It's got loudspeakers, and it makes it easier for the security staff to see what's going on. And obviously the theme that links these is kind of the gradual withdrawal of humanity, of individual, of people, of thinking people who can respond to a situation from what we might call law enforcement or sort of justice delivery, and to a rather more detached sort of a hands-off relationship with the world around us. Now, this isn't very new, of course. I mean, we've been talking for ages about drones that fly over war zones and are remotely controlled from hundreds or thousands of miles away. But it seems to be, it's coming into our cities and into our shopping centres now. And I think, all those sort of theoretical questions that we've been asking about, where do you draw the line? How does it work ethically? Those are starting to become real-world issues now, and I think it's quite, I think it's timely for us to work out where we stand.
So the PC Pro podcast is going to sort this out, is it? It's going to basically, it's the ethics committee.
Well, someone's got, what's that phrase? Thought leadership. Somebody has to, has to bite the bullet and say this is good, this is bad. So come on, chaps.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Nicole, because you have you talked to quite a lot of people who are experts in AI and robotics.
Yeah, I have. I don't think that really goes very far in answering the ethics question, though, which is sort of the big problem. I mean, the U.S. has been using drones kind of overseas to kill people for years, sometimes getting it the wrong person, which is probably pretty awkward for that person. So the idea of police using this has sort of been discussed before, because I think that they've talked about, or they've used drones, like aerial drones, for intelligence before. But now the idea that they're actually going to be taking people out is it's kind of a step forward. And, I can see why they did it. It was obviously a very extreme situation, and you certainly didn't want more police officers to be getting shot at just to try to take this guy in. But on the flip side, this is the sort of thing that you really do need, like a police ethics committee or, just internal affairs or whatever it is that they would normally have looking at a situation to really examine this and put some very strict rules about how you would ever use forget even a robot. Blowing up someone is very extreme. And it's the sort of thing that really needs to have a lot of rules around.
There's another wrinkle I'd like to throw in as well, actually. The reason that I heard about the shopping mall robots, it's actually been around for a while. It wasn't just introduced last week. But last week there was a complaint because reportedly this robot bumped into someone's kid and knocked the child down and injured them slightly. And so it becomes not only about what you're deliberately doing with these robots, but also what your liability is for the fact that you're not so much in control. You're distancing yourself. You're trusting technology in a way which you didn't used to before. And to what extent are you responsible? You're liable for that.
Well, has no human security guard ever bumped into someone before?
Exactly. It happens all the time. It's not exactly the same, but we saw it recently with that Tesla incident with the car where the driver was watching Harry Potter movies, and unfortunately the camera couldn't distinguish between the reflections on the road and the fact that this white trailer was crossing his path, and so he went straight under it basically, and that was the end. But accidents like that do happen all the time, different situations, but they think about all the people every day, every year that get killed on the roads, and we're blind to it. But as soon as you put the word robot in there, people get very edgy, and it makes these headlines. I mean, basically, if you swapped out the robot in this headline from that story, Darian, so it's not robot ran over our child, say angry parents, it's security guard bumped into our child, say angry parents. It's a non-story.
It is a non-story, but I think there's a real concern there, which is what would have happened if a human had been there. Humans aren't perfect, but humans are able to use judgment, and they're able to respond, and they're able to look around them in a crisis. We've got you and I, we've got decades of experience of going about in the real world, and whether the robot is autonomous, as in the case of the autonomous car, or whether it's being remote controlled. That kind of whoever is operating it, whatever program is operating it, is not going to have that kind of real world moxie. It's not going to be so present, and so I think it's quite reasonable to say we're very upset that this robot ran over our kid because it seems like it wasn't properly programmed, or it wasn't being properly controlled, and therefore shouldn't have been there.
Was the child being properly programmed?
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? But it comes down to the fact that nothing can be programmed perfectly, and it's the same with the Tesla car or the robot in the supermarket, or even if we're taking it to the logical extremes, the robot that goes and blows up suspected terrorists or whatever. That accidents are going to happen, mistakes are going to be made. And it's just, I think, balancing the probability of those mistakes. I mean, literally just did a Google search while you were talking. 30,800 fatal crashes a year in the US. The only one that I've reported about in the past few months is one that was caused by Tesla, and I suspect it's the only one. And so when you juggle up the amount of road miles that car's taken compared to the fatality rate, I suspect it's fairly low. So I think we are going to have to tackle these dilemmas in the years to come. But I think when you look at the hard stats, I think the automation is almost certainly always going to win. The problem is, as I think you were alluding to, Tim, is just a psychology of people wanting to blame a robot more than they would blame a driver who just didn't see the guy crossing the road or accidentally jumped a red light. And legally, of course, there's people are going to be straight in the court suing Tesla and God knows who, because there's some liability there.
I actually think we just need to be a bit careful. If I was thinking back to the start of I'm trying to. What would you call it? When cars started to become popular. So we're talking about the 1900s when...
I'm not that old, Tim. I don't remember this.
But you do remember the stories of people walking in front of the cars with red flags, and the fears about if you went over a certain amount of speed, that people wouldn't be able to breathe. All these kind of things, those were what were people were concerned about at the start. And to be fair, they probably had a point if you talk about those stats you just made, Barry. You could argue we've gone too far in terms of how much we limit or don't limit the speeds that cars can go on the roads today. But we just need to watch out for this stage of technology where it's very, very new, and if our reaction is just almost so reactionary that it stops us from doing anything, then that will be, I think, a big disappointment.
I have a little visualization trick I like to do, which is if I'm not sure how I feel about something, I just ask myself, if it were, project forward 100 or 200 years in the future, and does it seem absolutely normal and logical that that's where we'd be, or does it seem ridiculously retrograde? With autonomous cars, it just seems absolutely obvious that's where we need to end up. And so it's kind of, anybody fighting it is just, is just trying to turn back the tide.
Well, I think the problem with this case is Teslas aren't autonomous, and they're not supposed to be. I mean, the fact that the cameras couldn't tell a large lorry driving in front of it is pretty alarming. That's not good. And you're not supposed to be taking your hand off the wheel. You're still supposed to be driving. But Tesla has called this this tool in the car, this feature in the car, autopilot, which sort of suggests you can take your hands off the wheel. So you're talking about robot being kind of the scary word. It's that Tesla called this the wrong thing. This is not a self-driving car. It is not an autonomous car. It is supposed to kind of back you up with lane changing. That's what it's supposed to be used for. And if you can use it for something else, they really need to do a better job of limiting that, because you should not be able to take your hands off the wheel and be watching a Harry Potter movie going down the road with an autopilot system that isn't autopilot yet.
Yeah, I think that's the big danger. The current models of cars, there's a lot of those out there at the moment that are doing a sort of hybrid job where they automate some parts of the job, like parking, reverse parking, as you say, monitoring lane discipline. And then, but you're still effectively the driver. As you said, you're not meant to put your feet up and point it in the direction of home. And there is a massive danger there, because people obviously rely on those tools more than they should. And I think that is actually those kind of vehicles are more of a threat than the fully autonomous vehicles. I mean, I disagree that I don't think fully autonomous cars are going to make it onto the roads. I think what we'll end up with is some kind of hybrid system. Gradually, I think we'll end up with motorways where autonomous vehicles are used on motorways in a sort of fully autonomous mode. But I think for anything off motorway, I think we'll still end up with full manual control for decades, because there are just too many challenges for driving around small residential areas on roads as unpredictable or much less predictable than motorways, that I think we're not going to see fully autonomous vehicles.
I know what you mean about that, Barry, but there was work done by an Oxford-based, someone based in the University of Oxford, something called, I think it was just called Robot Car, and they had a project where they did map those areas you're talking about. So they would have built up over time, based on an original map, but built up over time an exact view of what the roads would be like, so they would know where that bend-in is, and they would be able to detect, okay, this is a foreign object 50 yards away, or 20 yards behind us, so that they could react to that. So there are technologies that are in place that could actually combat what you're talking about.
That's not the problem. The problem for driving autonomously in anywhere off a motorway is the 1,000,001 different scenarios that you can find that a computer will probably struggle to deal with. So, for example, to get down a small road down here, you basically have to bump up the curb to get around the parked car. An autonomous vehicle will never do that, because that's breaking the rules of an autonomous vehicle. You can't bump up a road because that will be set in its software. You can't bump up the pavement. What happens?
You are breaking the highway code there, Barry. I just want to point that out.
Of course, but this happens the entire time at mini roundabouts, for example, where you've got 3 people at a junction. How does autonomous, or all 3 exits have got a car sitting at them? How do autonomous cars deal with that kind of scenario?
Which I think that's quite easy.
They don't really happen in America. But not when there's one human car, an autonomous car here. Lots of visual cues that you rely on from other drivers, for example, like the wave or the flash of the headlights to say, come through here. Autonomous cars are going to struggle to ever deal with that kind of scenario, and there are so many of those. Going to park at the school fete parks at the weekend, where you park on the field, what would the car do there? It would have no concept of how to get waved in by 2 blokes in a tabard saying, come on, park here. The car would just freeze. There's no way a Google car could ever do that.
I know what you mean,
so many of these scenarios where it would just collapse.
I do know what you mean, but you're kind of if you're organising a school fete in 20 years where all the cars are autonomous, then you don't rely on a bloke in a tabard. You have a system there. You have a beacon based system. So you use technology to solve it. You're just, what you're doing is you're kind of taking all these old solutions, these old kind of cues that we've developed because of the way we do things, and then you're applying it to the future. Things will change, Barry.
Yeah, they will. But sorry, just to finish my point. But I think, like I say, I think motorways this can work perfectly well because it's very predictable. I think the only way it's going to happen off motorway is that you'll effectively end up with like bus lanes where autonomous cars can use bus lanes where again the behaviour is reasonably predictable and other drivers, and they can map those lanes so they don't end up in those crazy scenarios that I was just talking about where you got to bump up a curb or get round freeway junctions, and you'll still have normal roads, and over time that may phase out. That's the only way I can see it happening. I think trying to throw fully autonomous cars onto ordinary roads for the next 10, 20 years, it's either going to be chaos or it's just not going to happen. It's going to create so many problems that we'll end up going back.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. I mean, I think there's a real, perhaps because it's engineers who are doing this stuff, there's a real desire to make the car as smart as it can possibly be and to really focus on that. But actually, a lot of the problems could be solved by just, editing the roads a little bit, by changing the problem a bit to fit better the solutions that we already have.
So what do you think, Barry, to the fact that delivery robots, according to this is the Telegraph technology pages, delivery robots are going to replace takeaway drivers in London? In a trial, at least.
It's the same thing. I mean, delivery is where this. In fact, I'm amazed Amazon isn't the company that's driving this more, because Amazon is the company that by far has the most to gain here. We're doing a feature for you currently, Tim, but I've had 6 different Amazon drivers at my door in the past week, and when you think about the human cost of that alone, is enormous for Amazon. And if they could automate that, and the drones idea is never going to, it's even less likely than the cars.
It's never going to fly.
Yeah, but I'm astonished there, and they may well be behind the scenes, that they're not all over this.
So you are for automated drivers, but only if they deliver you stuff?
Yes.
Okay, it's good to know exactly where you are.
Well, there is something to that, though. I mean, this was a really interesting story, actually. This, by the way, was the sort of light-hearted thing I promised at the end of those stories of things blowing up and bumping into kids. Is yes, Just Eat, the delivery company, has said that, not delivery company, the opposite of the delivery company, the food middleman company that arranges for deliveries to happen, but the deliveries are actually still carried out, I believe, by the restaurants themselves, has invested in getting little robots. Like, I don't know if you remember, was it called Big Track, the little thing that used to have in the late 70s, early 80s? Yeah, those type of things.
Apple to your dad.
Yeah, and it's pretty much exactly one of those little 6-wheel thing that just trundles along the pavement, and it's a locked box containing your food, and it just sort of and I think that's I've quite forgotten where we were going with this because I was so carried away by the reminiscences of playing with the Big Track.
I never played with that. There is there's a new little programmable robot which looks quite cool. I think it's not the first version of these, but these little balls that Sphera have produced. It's actually it's child-proof and dog-proof, useful for you, Barry. That is the new Big Track. It can't actually carry food, unfortunately.
Well, then it's useless.
It is useless. Sorry, I got carried away there. I was just thinking as well about if you imagine this container of food, imagine how yucky it's going to be by the end of the day. It's going to have had Chinese in there, Indian in there, probably Vietnamese food, noodles, and all this kind of stuff is going to be gathered. All this juice is going to be gathered at the bottom of the container.
We have like plastic technology now. You can put things in Tupperware containers and seal them.
They don't just lump it all into the bottom.
No, they don't just pour your soup into the container and then put the prawn balls on top of it.
Why aren't we talking about this? This is crazy. Plastic.
Well, you're the chairman. I mean.
Well, unless you've got anything to add, then Darian, let's move on.
I think we've done this to death.
To the next subject, which is the small matter, Barry, of Brexit.
Yes, I'd probably sneaked up on a few people out there, but apparently we've voted to leave the European Union, and so some people in the tech industry are a little bit concerned about this. For pretty much the same reasons people in other industries are concerned about it, to be honest, in terms of access to labour, access to the single market. But I think in terms of UK technology in particular, we've long known there's been a sort of recruitment problem over here in terms of getting the right skills of people coming out of university. A lot of the big tech companies are reliant on that European labour pool, because they simply struggle to fill the jobs with qualified people from this country, and the obvious fear being that if we follow through with Article 50 and end up putting some controls on immigration from the EU, that there will be some limit on the free flow of labour that will affect the technology companies and their ability to recruit suitably qualified staff, and I suspect the other factor there is cheap enough staff, because labour coming from Eastern Europe is significantly cheaper than the labour over here as well.
Do we know whether the EU sends any funding to the Silicon Fen or the Silicon Roundabout? Is that another issue, or I simply don't know?
I don't know is the simple answer to that. I don't think so, not much. But what the EU has done over the years, in particular, is invested in broadband infrastructure. So a lot of the Cornwall project that was undertaken by BT was based on European funding, because Cornwall was identified as for want of a better word, deprived region, where it would benefit most from having access to fibre broadband in the home, because it would allow people to do remote working and stuff like that. So there've certainly been instances where technology in the UK has benefited from EU funding. Whether that would be replaced post Brexit, who knows?
Well, yes, and there's an immediate aftermath of this as well, because of the collapse in the pound, particularly against the dollar, and all these American companies, obviously they all component prices basically work in dollars. So we've seen that, in fact, because the latest issue of PC Pro out in shops now. I think it's out in shops tomorrow, actually. But it's you picking out one. There you go. Yes.
Found it. There we go.
Yes. So, well, if you can see the screen, then you'll see Darren's moved it away now. But it said 699 PCs at the top. Quiet, expandable, and packed with power. They are still quite expandable and packed with power. Unfortunately,
they are still PCs.
They're still PCs, but they certainly are not, in the majority of cases at least, 699 anymore, because the incredible, these companies are used to minor fluctuations in the pound versus dollar. But really, it's just plummeted. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's something like 145 to about 127 now. But you're talking about 15% swings, and as a result, unavoidably, these companies have had to put the price up. So we put a Facebook post up there, but to give you some example, the average is about £70 increase, so roughly a 10% increase on component costs. Exactly what it is depends on what people have inside the computers, but GTX cards, for example, seem to be quite badly affected. For whatever reason, core processors will have been badly affected. So it's having a real effect now.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the skeptic in me wonders how much of that is an excuse. If it was
one company, are you talking about Intel raising its prices?
Not specifically, but PC makers are not buying like on the go. They're not buying their components on demand.
No.
So they're going to have stockpiles of the components in those PCs they send to you. So I think some of this is a little bit exaggerated at times, and we never see it the other way. The pound against the dollar and euro especially has really risen over the past couple of years. But I don't, and it's always harder to spot a long-term trend than a short-term crash. Yeah. But I still don't remember seeing a great swing in price when the currency was doing well. So I'm always a little bit
I don't think that most
weary
people.
of these companies.
I know what you mean, obviously, but I'm not sceptical about this because as soon as it happened, I got this different message from about 4 or 5 different companies. So if it had been 1 or 2 kind of chancing it, then I'd agree with you. But it's not that at all.
Well, there tends to be a domino effect to those kind of things, in the same way when BT puts up its line rental, every other telephone company puts up its line rental because you can get away with it now. The big companies got away with it. So, I think it's a bit of both, but I'm not entirely convinced it's all been beautifully accounted and they were working on such thin margins beforehand that they've now suddenly got us on cut the price by 60 quid.
Such a silly
most PCs are working on about a 5 to, if they're very lucky, 7 or 8% margin. So a 10% swing makes that non-affordable for them to do. Like you say, I'm not saying that they have a bunch of components out back. This might be a longer term trend if the pound stays bad.
Oh yeah, and the not only the margin is very thin, but I think, to be honest, I think many of these companies, when I went to them and said, we've got a budget of $699, what can you do? I think because they wanted to really, put their best foot forward and get some brand recognition, I suspect they cut their margins further just to get, the best system they possibly could into that labs test, and that's all obviously maybe come back to bite them now.
I don't know if you've seen the. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, no. Max sends. So if you're watching this live, you can add questions. Send us questions as we talk. Max sent us taking the opportunity to ask us whether this is a lead-in to a bit about the mag going up in price, and we should renew our subscriptions now. So I think he's equally cynical as you, Barry. No, as far as I'm aware, there is no subscription rise on the horizon. But don't feel free to renew, to buy, to support this wonderful magazine in any which way you see fit.
Well, we're printed in the UK, aren't we, using British ink? So our costs. I think Stuart Mitchell and Dick Pounton are the only sort of external costs that we have. Now that obviously Nicole is a British citizen, we're pretty sorted for sourcing things.
Well, Dick only ever lived for a few months outside of in Italy. I think he's back in the country maybe now. In which case, it's only Stuart Mitchell who is our expat.
Oh yes, because we call them expats when they're from here and living abroad. And well, I won't get into that.
Yeah, let's not go down that particular tunnel. Instead, let's talk about what. Well, we've got a new Prime Minister. We're recording this at between 1 and 1:45 this afternoon. I think, is it 3 o'clock that we have a new Prime Minister, Barry?
I think so, yeah.
Something like that, or at least David Cameron tenders his resignation to the Queen. So it's something like that anyway. So what's Theresa May ever done for us, Barry?
Well,
Theresa or Theresa?
Tomato. But in terms of technology, what Theresa May has been perhaps best known for was trying to relentlessly push through what's been labelled a Snoopers Charter, which has taken the form of different bills over the past 4 or 5 years, pretty much since the Conservatives came into government, at least in the coalition government anyway. And it's sort of been thwarted at various stages throughout its life. So you may remember that in about 2012, the original bid to get the Snoopers Charter through failed because the Liberal Democrats failed to back it, and it was always going to get blocked by Labour and the rest of the opposition. There's actually, going back to the EU, have made a couple of put blocks on some of the measures, some of the harsher data collection measures that were being proposed because they invalidated the EU's data retention directive, for example. And so I guess now the fear is that now we're lumping ourselves potentially outside of European law, and B, we've just appointed, well, we haven't, the Conservatives have just appointed the woman who was championing this bill through the House, is that she may now get her way in creating a mass database of communications data that is collected upon all of us, and that's probably putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5 to some extent, because there's still a parliament to get it through. But you could certainly argue that it makes it more likely that the more sweeping powers, the more some of the more extensive surveillance powers that they were looking to implement are now more likely to happen.
Yeah,
I was saying before we came on air, I'll be very interested to see to what extent Prime Minister Theresa May is the continuation of Home Secretary Theresa May, because it's never very clear with with these sort of team playing front bench politicians to what extent they are living out their own beliefs and to what extent they're actually sort of doing a very good job of towing a particular line that's been pressed through cabinet. And I really can't tell, because I think the things that Theresa May has said in the past week have been so at odds with her record over the past 6 years that it's a blank slate, and anybody could actually emerge, I think, from the mix of inputs that we've had.
And just because we're leaving Europe doesn't mean that Europe doesn't influence our laws. So one of the things that's happened over the past, I guess, year and a half ago is the whole failing of safe harbor, and that the EU basically said we don't trust data in the US, so now we have to work out all of these rules. And a lot of that has to do with the surveillance and the mass collection that was happening there. And if that continued, and if the U.S. hadn't put the sort of minor protections that they had, a lot of that data sharing was not going to happen, which would be very problematic for Silicon Valley companies. So the UK and British companies are still going to have to deal with what Europe wants in terms of data protection, because otherwise none of this works.
Yeah, absolutely. There's GDPR, which has just come into action, and yeah, if you just do business in your micro area, then you don't need to worry about it. But as soon as you have a customer in Europe, you have to obey the same legislation. So yeah, it's not actually possibly going to be as big a change as we believe. I think you probably extend that wider, but that would be moving to the political area. We should probably not go there. Okay. Unless anyone else wishes to add to that particular discussion, let's move on to something a bit more.
Well, we do have a very important question from a viewer. Have you seen?
Oh yes, sir, you're quite right. Yes, okay, we do have one. So this is a Mr. Stuart Mitchell. I believe that's how you pronounce it.
It's like where he's from, Tim.
Yeah, I can see cows in the background, so it must be rural France, I imagine. Actually, Stuart Mitchell. So he is our news editor, but he also brews beer. I'm not even sure if you can buy the beer in the UK. I think you've got to be in France. But anyway, he wants to know: do I get a pay rise to make up the exchange rate shortfall, or am I the human equivalent of component stock? I'd like to answer that in two parts. Stuart, you've always been the human equivalent of component stock, and you don't get a pay rise.
Can you tell him that components generally work on time as well?
I believe there's a clue to this, the fact that what happens is when you speak into your microphone, everyone can hear it, not just me. It's the marvellous thing about this podcast. Okay, Nicole, let's talk about Pokemon.
Yes. So Pokemon Go, if you have been online at all in the last few days, everyone is talking about it, which is why I downloaded it, because apparently I'm a total follower. It is a very, very silly augmented reality game. So if any of you, I know Darian's played it. I'm assuming Tim and Barry are gonna say
no. I haven't.
How have you got it? Because it's not available in the UK yet, is it?
So as a technology journalist, I know how to sideload apps onto my phone, Barry.
Oh, that's dangerous, Nico. You want to stop doing that? I've read articles about that.
Yeah, apparently if you do that, you're at risk of getting malware. But I'd rather have Pokemon Go. So
it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Complete waste of time that kills your battery life.
Yeah, and it's great. So for people who haven't played it, there's a map and you walk around and you little Pokemon characters pop out and you get to catch them, and then you can go train them to fight at gyms, which are kind of located all over the place. The nearest gym to my house is in the cemetery, so if you want to play at night, you're going to have to break into the cemetery, which seems a little harsh. But this has just gone completely crazy. The latest stats that I've seen is that 5% of U.S. Android users are actively using Pokemon Go, which works out to about 1 million people. That's not counting Apple. That's just Android users in the U.S. As Barry was saying, we can't actually download it here through the Google Play Store, and that's because they're worried that their servers can't handle it. Nintendo's stocks went through the roof because this game is so popular. And then there's been all the very silly stories about people getting mugged and showing up at people's houses because for some reason it's a Pokemon gym. So you have to go stand outside the person's house in order to play the game. So there's been a lot of very, very silly things that have been happening. But yeah, it's been kind of interesting because I don't think we've had a tech phenomenon quite this big and this fast lately. So I don't know if it's because everything's really depressing in the world right now and cute little cartoon characters are exactly what we need, or if the game is somehow that magically addictive.
I think you're absolutely right about the speed of it being something that's really interesting. But it's one of those phenomena which they don't come along very often. It's one of those ones where as soon as you hear about it, I know you're in the same boat. As soon as you hear about it, you're like, I'd quite like to have a go at that. I'd quite like to just see how it works for myself. I was showing it to my wife said the other day, what's this Pokemon Go that suddenly just in the past 2 days become in all the headlines and it's all anyone's talking about on Twitter. And so I pulled out my phone and I said, well look, you can see that there's a Bulbasaur just outside the tube station down the road. And she was like, what? and it's wonderful because it really does, and this is the thing that Nintendo has done before, it brings gaming into a slightly different dimension. They did it with the Wii in the way that, although the technology existed, no one had really properly integrated, waving things in the air with console gaming. In the same way, although there have obviously been games, for years and years where you go to places and your location is, feeds into the gameplay. This is so simple and it works so fluidly. It's so natural. You don't need to read the instructions. You just see a map of where you are, and you can see the roads, and you can see there's a monster down the end of that road. I mean, you might be tempted to run away. I don't know, but.
But what's the overall goal here? Are you just meant to collect as many monsters as you can? What's the?
So once you get monsters, you can train them, and then you fight them. It's kind of actually terrible.
I can fight your monsters, or
you go to a gym. We have to go to the same gym. So if you actually want to play the game, you can't do it from your own house. You have to go walk down the street to wherever your nearest gym is, and then go train your monster and fight it there.
And so if Darren was there, you two could go in pitch battle and decide who has the better. Is it to the death? What happens?
I think they just pass out because it's too cute for dead things. But if Darren and I wanted to fight each other at the same gym, this just really sounds very weird. But if we wanted to do that, we'd actually have to get together in person. So one of the things that Nintendo is actually planning on doing with this is putting advertising into the game. So if you're the local Starbucks or the local pub, you could pay money to have a gym installed at your location because it's going to draw people there.
So let me just get this straight. Nintendo is basically encouraging my kids to go out into random bits of the street and to collect monsters and then get them to meet up with perfect strangers so they can have a fight over some monsters.
And pay for a cappuccino, Barry.
Yes. But, I mean, the really interesting thing is, for the most part, I'm sure there are children playing this, but this is adults playing this. It sounds very silly, but it's...
If it was only children playing it, I wouldn't be so worried. The fact that it's adults being encouraged to meet out with children is the most terrifying part of the entire enterprise.
I know what you mean about kind of the danger that, your kids with their... kids do have Android phones or whatever at a very young age will be inclined to run off down the roads, unsupervised. But there's also something fantastic about the way that it's a mobile game which is getting people up and walking and moving about in a way that it completely turns on its head the stereotype of what actually means to play a computer game. I find that quite exciting, and I think although Pokemon Go seems although everyone is mad about it now, it feels quite limited in terms of. Well, I say that. I mean, Pokemon's been a phenomenon which has endured decades, but I can't really picture somebody, sticking with Pokemon Go for 3 years or whatever. But it feels like it's opening the door to a whole new sort of gaming, and I think that's potentially not only exciting and interesting, but could actually be a very good thing for the, for the general health of the world.
Sorry, for the health of the world.
Well, I was going to say for the health of the United States, because I think that's the stereotypical market where of couch potatoes, but that's not really fair, and it's not limited to the US at the moment, as Barry implied earlier on. You can't actually download it in the UK, but I mean wherever it is, people are. I presume in Japan as well. People of all cultures and all nationalities are being inspired to get up and go out and catch their monsters.
Yeah, there are some very funny stories of people who had like step counters on while playing this game, and they hit like 15, 16, 17,000 steps when they would normally have half as many, and it's just because at lunchtime they want to go find whatever monster is down the street, so they actually get up away from their desk and go walk. I mean, we've all been telling people, go for a walk at lunch and get up away from your desk, and now there's some dumb little cartoon character that you want to digitally catch, so you're actually doing it. I don't know what this says about people, but
well, gamification, it's always been kind of known. If you want to get people to do something they don't want to do, give them a reward, give them an incentive for it.
Well, two things here. If you want to go out for a walk every day, get yourself a dog. I've discovered that. But B, does this mean I'm going to become a Pokemon Go master because I'm out walking a dog for about an hour a day? So am I going to be able to hoover up the entire neighbourhood, and is it just going to be the dog walkers who dominate the Pokemon Go arena?
Well, you could. There was a. It's weird that I remember this. There's a dog shelter in Muncie, Indiana, which is loaning out dogs to people playing Pokemon Go, saying these dogs need walking. Do everyone a favour and take one with you while you're hunting.
Oh, God alive!
Dog alive. Yeah, well, it sounds like this reminds me of Tamagotchi and those kind of crazes. Why is it always about little cute things that flourish into life?
It feeds into our deep. It feeds into kind of the parental instinct, I think, doesn't it? I think you want to look after and nurture, because Pokemon are cute. If they looked like if they look if they look like sea cucumbers, you probably wouldn't bother going to get one. But
some of them are pretty weird looking.
Yeah, some of them are quite monsterish.
But I mean, there has been quite a few problems that have come out of this already, just because it's so busy. I mean, I was reading a story in Sydney. There's a small park that has been a gym in the game, and it would normally have like a small handful of people in the evening, and people who live there counted, and was roughly 1,000 people there last night, which the park can't handle. So they've had to put extra police on, and they've had to have extra garbage pickup because it's just making a mess of this park. And people who live there feel it's really antisocial. And then there's been stories about muggings, some of which probably aren't actually true. But a group of teenagers did get arrested because they were hanging out at, I think it was a Pokestop, and mugging people when they showed up. Just you stand in there with your phone. They just grab your phone and run off. It's a pretty easy crime. The worst one, I think, we were talking about this before we started the hangout, was people have been playing it at Auschwitz, because that is for some reason a gym, because any kind of historical place or memorial tends to become a thing in the game, and people are playing it there, which is really, really horrible. So people from the museum there have asked people to stop, just please stop. And apparently they've requested the game developers to just please remove this. It's kind of sad.
This is an absolutely true story. Last night, it was I'm a director of a non-league football club, and it was our first pre-season game. And I think
everyone who ever follows the PC Pro account knows that you're a director of Is it Lewis FC, Barry?
Yes, I don't want to product place, but yes. We scored a fantastic goal, 3-3 goal last night, 35 yards outside the box, possibly 40, maybe even 45. And when the game ended, I went to one of the guys one of the volunteers, and said, "Oh, did you see Hamo's goal?" He says, "No, there was a Pokemon in the car park at the time. I was outside getting it." Unbelievable.
Is it the case that if a Pokemon appears somewhere in the real world, it's in the same place for everyone playing the game?
Because that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I saw a video of lots of people all kind of moving determinedly in the same direction, staring at their phones, as if they all wanted to get they wanted to be the first one to get the monster. But I feel like if it were that, they would have been sprinting, and it would have been carnage when they actually got to the place. I'm not really sure how that works.
You know what? This is the killer app for the Google Glass.
Ah.
Because what an advantage that is. Just not to hold anything. You can actually just keep on running and after the Pokemon.
Well, I think Google Glass is an example of the sort of thing I think could be rehabilitated. Maybe as we will remember, the hardware had its limitations. But I think Pokemon Go is one of those great gateway drugs for augmented reality. And once you've had the experience of looking around your room and seeing that there's a Charmander sitting on your armchair or whatever, then your mind is open to the possibility maybe you could be walking down the street and see special offers superimposed on the shop or whatever. It's just it opens the door.
There appears to be two behind you right now, Darian.
Barry, you stole my line.
Sorry. Darian, for the benefit of the tape, has some. Looks like a Mario character behind you.
Oh, that's a one-up mushroom. Sorry, that's a grow larger mushroom. And this here is Pilchard from Bob the Builder. I'm surprised you didn't know that.
That is true. Okay, well, Tom Burnett has asked whether we think this will spark off copycat games. In the way that we did when it came out. Do you reckon there could be more kind of games like this do you think might appear?
If I tell you, you're just going to program it and put it on the Google Play Store and become a millionaire.
Well, my clever idea was to take this and then combine it with Tinder, but then that probably would just lead to some really bad situations.
Would that mean you'd be running down the street to try to find an attractive woman, and when you got there, you had to kind of swipe on her before anyone else could?
Yeah, it'd be pretty bad.
Okay.
I mean, there are already copycat games in the sense that there are rip-offs, because certainly in the UK you can't get the actual game through the Play Store, but there's plenty of games which are dressed up to look like it, which are trying to get you to pay your $1.99 or whatever. That's just a perennial problem.
Well, and Pokemon Go is actually a rip-off of they ripped themselves off. It's the same game developers made a game called Ingress, which is just a less cheerful version of this without Pokemon characters. But it just didn't take off.
Without Pokemon, it's nothing.
Sorry, what is Ingress then?
It's Pokemon Go without Pokemon.
So what? Depressing things happening?
It's like sci-fi themed or something. I haven't played it because it doesn't have a Pikachu in it.
See, I did play Ingress a while back, and it managed to reduce my already paltry battery life to about 6.5 minutes. So I think the entire world, the limit of Pokemon Go will be that everyone's smartphone batteries are going to be running out in record time. The biggest benefactor of this is going to be the people who make those portable battery pack things.
So that little
fly off the shelves.
Yeah, the little park I was talking about in Sydney that has 1,000 people coming into it every night. Apparently, there's people walking around hawking battery packs.
Yeah, I bet they
so
are.
It's good for industry.
Ooh, yeah,
stimulating the economy. That could be something the UK specialises in the near future.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So let's move on to finish off with the hot hardware of the week. So this is actually something that Barry wanted to talk about because he's bought it.
Yes. So I am currently sitting in a new office. I converted my garage into an office, and one of the problems of doing that, apart from being a traipse through the rain away from the toilet, is that I can't hit a doorbell. So I needed some kind of solution so that when the Amazon man arrives on his near daily basis, or my dearly beloved girlfriend orders something from Debenhams again, and I've formed a very close bond with the Debenhams delivery woman, I need to be able to hear her.
Does Lucy know about that?
Only because, anyway, let's not delve into my private hell. So the answer to this appeared to be a product called Ring, which is a Wi-Fi enabled doorbell. Now, I am the person, whenever anyone's brought Wi-Fi enabled kettles or whatever into the office, the first person to string them up and for over-engineering a perfectly simple product. And this is the very definition of over-engineering a very simple product, because you're basically replacing a battery and a bell with a charging battery device that you have to screw to the outside of your house that connects to your Wi-Fi router, and then you have to install apps on each of your phones to know when a door rings. You can also buy a separate device called a chime, which actually replaces the physical doorbell in your house. So when someone presses the doorbell, it sends a message to the router sends a message back to the chime, and it rings. That does mean if your Wi-Fi fails, your doorbell's screwed. So there are problems with this thing. You can actually, if you do have a wired doorbell, a wired doorbell that runs off electricity, you can wire it up to the chime buzzer, and it will ring without the Wi-Fi getting in the way. However, that requires some kind of degree in electronics that I was unable to master, so mine's running wirelessly. So I spent about 2 hours trying to put this thing up this morning. So it basically comes with an assembly kit. You get a drill bit, you get some very specific screws, you get some sort of raw plugs to stick into your wall to drill the thing into. I am the world's worst DIY person. I really am to DIY what Jeremy Corbyn is to stable government. So it took me 4 hours to, not 4 hours, it took me 2 hours to mount this thing this morning. It requires you to drill in 4 flipping screws. And even then, I got the position of the 4th screw so wrong that it's basically being held up by three screws and a bit of good luck. But I eventually got it mounted onto the thing. Actually setting up the device is fairly simple. You just have a sort of pairing exercise where you press a button on the back of the doorbell. You have the app on the phone, and as long as you're both on the same Wi-Fi network, hallelujah, everything works fine. And so obviously I tested it out before I mounted it on the door, made sure that when I pressed the buzzer I was getting the video screen on my phone. All seemed to be working fine. Like I say, went through my DIY hell this morning, but it was up, it's there, it's mounted. Put a bit of tape over the old doorbell telling people not to touch that. And away we go. So I've sat in the office all morning waiting for somebody to come and ring my bell. I've had absolutely nothing. Popped in for lunch at about midday just to have a bite to eat, and I hear and a massive thud at my door, and there's a postman standing there. And I said, did you not see the sign to press the doorbell? He said, I did. And we tested it out about 5 times, and of course the damn thing's not working. So I have no idea currently why the Ring doorbell is not ringing. There's error messages are popping up on my Android handset saying device error or something or other. The Windows 10 app as well, so it's got apps for Windows 10, iOS and Android. Windows 10 app seems to think it's fine. And then about 10 minutes before we came on air, I got an alert from the Windows app saying somebody knocked on my door half an hour ago. So, everything's working very smoothly so far. As long as people are prepared now to wait at my door for around 45 minutes, this could be the perfect solution to my problems. But I'm going to stress this is my first morning. There may be some troubleshooting ahead. Yeah. There's going to be some strenuous calls to Ring's technical support department this afternoon. But right now, this does not look like doorbell nirvana, I'm afraid.
No. Okay. All right. I tell you what, it might be a little bit too early to do a vote on this because I think I know where it would go. We'll come back to this in a couple of weeks' time. A shorter update. Do you want to show on the screen what the app looks like on your phone?
On my phone.
Yeah, if you hold it up to the screen.
Oh, this is high tech. I was going to actually share my screen. So
you can share the screen. That's fine.
Can I do that?
I'm sure you can.
Okay,
this will be fascinating for people.
Screen share. Here we go. You're probably going to see my email as well here. Or you're going to see a big head on Nicole. Here we go. Hang on. Where are we? There we go. Screen 2. Can you see that now?
We can just see your very big head, Barry.
Hang on. Hang on.
Oh, yeah, it's all gone black. Oh no, now there's Nicole. Oh, there we go.
So for the lucky 8 of you who are watching this live on Google, what I'll describe to it in audio for the other few thousand people who actually care about this. So what you get basically is a list of your devices. So my one is just a front door device. They do security cameras that you can mount all over the place and not see anything, I suspect, and the chime devices that I mentioned before. So they all have to be managed from this central app. And if somebody rings at your door, on the phone, you get a sort of loud beep and a notification. I've not seen it go off on the PC yet because it didn't work, but I'm assuming it's a very similar kind of thing. And then you can, there's various menus to change different call settings. It also has a motion alert, so you can basically set it to, if someone approaches your door and starts sniffing around without ringing the doorbell, you can get that to send off an alert. So I guess it's quite good for spotting burglars. All it would actually do is spot the people who come and put those plastic bags through your door every 6 seconds for charities. Spot cats, yeah. So I hope not, because the dog would go absolutely crazy for that. It's a fairly basic fairly basic control panel, and it's in fact so basic that I can't actually tell if the damn thing's still connected. Really, at least it seems to all intents and purposes think it's still there and working. But
it's got 60% battery.
And if you see there, that is me testing out my doorbell about 45 minutes ago, and the picture is of me looking down at my phone, basically jabbing it, going, "Why are you not working?" And the postman laughing at me, who is just off to the left there. So it's about 3 hours well spent today so far.
Why don't you run outside and go test it again, and we'll sit here and listen.
Do you want me to? Okay, hang on. Let's give this a go. I've got a dog here, so the dog is going to stay here. It's a well-trained guard dog.
Okay. What can we see at the moment on your screen? Can we see the right thing?
It's gone blank. Now the app's crashed. Hold the bells. Here we go. So there we go. Close window. Right, let me fire this up.
Ring, always home. Ring video doorbell.
Yeah, and now it's just not showing anything. This could be the worst demonstration. I can't. Oh, here we go. Right. Okay.
Go for it, Barry.
So it will take me 2 minutes to get outside, but this is live, people. I'll be back soon. I can't take my mic, so you're gonna have to.
This is what Noel Edmonds felt like, when he did all those big broadcasts. It's that exciting.
Okay, I'll leave you with a dog. If she barks, take her for a walk.
Cool.
I can feel the tension. Don't talk. We can't talk because we'll lose the screen.
I found a button which I think has locked Barry's screen. Are you still seeing Barry's screen?
I can see you.
Oh, you're not supposed to see me. I can see Barry's screen. Well, this is no good. Okay, try this. Right, you should now see Barry's screen regardless of...
PC Pro presented Barry Collins to everyone. Yep, we can see the screen.
We can have a look at what apps he's using. He's got Outlook, Explorer, Chrome, Word. This is...
Spotify.
Yep.
Oh, he's still got the notifications on.
I'm back.
Nothing happened, Barry.
Nothing happened. Wow. No, it's nothing on the phone either. Oh, the app's crashed. Oh, that's disappointing. This is £150, ladies and gentlemen. Amazon are going to be refunding me for it very shortly, I suspect.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think just the problems you're having. I mean, as soon as you said, it's Wi-Fi, and as you say yourself, you are among those who say this is a real sledgehammer to crack a nut, technologically speaking. And I was thinking, but you kind of have to do that if you want to have access on your mobile phone, and I can see why you would, if you're moving around, if you're moving, in the garden or whatever. This is the kind of thing that Bluetooth 5 is probably going to be better for once it comes out. Bluetooth 5 has 4 times the range of Bluetooth 4, so it should cover. Unless you live in a particularly impressive mansion, it should be okay to get your doorbell to talk to your smartphone.
So is that 40 meters in a straight line? Is that what?
Well, it's actually very hard to get anybody to commit to exactly what Bluetooth range is. But let's say yes, it's going to be of that order. And then it will work very nicely because you can just come and go and it will pair when it's near with your phone and as many phones as you want to register with it. Actually, I think there's a maximum of 7 Bluetooth relationships you can have. But and that will make this all work. For the time being, yes, it's quite an entertaining little tech demo.
Well, I'm not sure I'd use the word entertaining.
We've been laughing.
Well, I'm feeling for the listeners to the audio version of the podcast. I'm not quite sure how that would have worked. Although
I think they saw about as much as we did, to be honest.
It's very similar to actual experience. Nothing happens. This is all they've missed out on is an hour of me drilling into a wall and a lot of swearing.
One positive thing has come out of this, Barry, because Tom Burnett has pointed out you need to water your hanging basket.
Yes.
So
Tom, clearly there's my mother-in-law. It's out to me every couple of minutes.
Okay, all right, look. I think that's enough for one day. Like I say, let's hold fire on the Ring doorbell. If you have not still got it, Barry, in 2 weeks' time, then we can talk about it then. If you send it back, we'll consider that a not. Just
one final point, and Mike Bookham's chipped in on the comments, and it's a good point. The reason why it does use Wi-Fi predominantly is so you can see who's at your door when you're away from home. So if I go out into town, and it sends a video stream of my door, so I can answer, theoretically anyway, as if I'm at home. And so if the Amazon guy turns up, I can tell him to leave it next door, or if someone untoward is knocking on my door, I can try and pretend I'm in. This is all assumes the damn thing works, but it's a good point, Mike. That's why it uses Wi-Fi, and that's theoretically one of its big advantages.
Okay, all right. if anyone has the Ring doorbell who maybe is watching now and wants to quickly tell us whether it's good or not, then please do. In the 2 minutes that arbitrarily remain to us, I will just show this to the people who are actually watching and describe it verbally to those who aren't. This is the new issue of PC Pro, out on shelves now with our subscribers for a week. And in it, there's a big coverage of the Windows 10 anniversary update, which you wrote, Barry.
Yes.
Yep, ignore that bit. There's also a 2-page verdict from John Honeyball about whether Windows 10 has lived up to its promise. And actually, do you know what? It's worth talking about the family tree bit, maybe, Barry, that Dave Stevenson wrote for us.
Yes. Sorry, these features were done about 2 months ago, so my mind is a blank there. Yes, Dave has done a lovely piece on sort of modern-day genealogy and how the tracing your relatives online, you'd think that everything now would be entirely digitized, and that if I wanted to find out where the Collins of previous generation got married and died and whatever, that would be a simple web search. And in fact, because of a catastrophe of mismanagement at government data, that's not the case. And so Dave's got quite a colourful piece on the difficulties of actually trying to research your family history and gives you some actual tips about how to do this privately rather than relying on the disparate state of the UK's public records.
Okay, and also in this issue we have, I'll race through it, but we've got, this is, I don't think you've seen this yet, Nicole, this is the...
I have.
The robot special, I think I have, excellent. Robot special in futures, so talking about bots as we've covered today, also the Zenbo, a robot butler for $599, and it's just quite funny. You should read that. People should definitely read that. And then on a more practical level, there's how to kill distractions on your PC, and why Britain needs basically to follow New Zealand's lead and do proper fibre broadband. I have seen a couple more entries to say, I'm hoping someone said that they've got a Ring doorbell, but no.
They can have mine.
They can, but how much?
£150, I'll deliver it myself.
And in answer to Michael Deer's question, can we use staff appraisals on the podcasts? No. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Nicole, for your contributions today. And until next fortnight's podcast, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.